just do it. Just jump in, take action. Like you will see fruit. Don't be afraid. That fear of failure literally is like a magnet to the ground that's holding you down. You have to like pull against it because you will go far.
Let's welcome to the show, Dr. Inkem Ezamama.
Thank you so much, John, for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to be here. I've been watching and following you. And so the honor to be here today just tickles me. So thank you so much.
Well, listen, I'm excited to talk to you as well. We had the chance to meet each other in person about a month ago at the MFIN Con and loved hearing a little bit more about your story. And I obviously just went over your bio, but did that at a high level. So why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Okay. So like you said, I'm an ER physician and I've been doing that for almost 8 years. Seems like forever. But I learned that like we are skilled, very skilled at practicing medicine, but no one really taught us about finance. No one really taught us how to manage our wealth. And I realized that was a problem. And especially around COVID, I realized that like some of us needed to get second jobs. Lifestyle creep really took effect and people just didn't have money. And that's really when I started learning about multifamily investing. I started as a limited partner because at that point I thought, let me just see what's out there. I went to a conference and I heard another group speaking, and I was like, what is multifamily investing? And I just learned. I sat on the sidelines initially and I said, tell me everything that you can tell me. And then I jumped in as a limited partner, did my first deal, second deal, and I got proof of concept. I realized that this was truly a way that you could build wealth and still do what we love as physicians, as healthcare professionals. And that's when it all came together. And that's when I built Phoenix. I started learning. I started with books, then I moved to podcasts, and I moved to, boot camp and then intensives and then masterminds. And I just soaked it all. And the more I did, the more I realized that the people around me, colleagues, family, friends, healthcare professionals, they wanted to know more. And they were like, Inkem, tell us what you're doing. I realized, John, that we have the resources, but we didn't have access. And that's where I felt like I could really be a part. I could like really give value and educate our busy professionals in and out of the healthcare field that this is something that we can do, because the idea, or the goal behind it is to grow wealth so that you can practice medicine, so you can buy back your time, freedom, family, whatever it is that you want to do. And I think this is the doorway to it. So I'm so excited that like I learned about it. I'm so excited that I jumped in. I'm excited that like I truly got proof of concept, and now I'm teaching others and I'm seeing others, come alongside this journey with me, and it's been really, really exciting. Like it's been
I,
truly exciting.
I really enjoy hearing you talk about your journey because you hit on so many key aspects, right? From an education standpoint, you mentioned going to events, learning more about this space, investing, reading books, listening to podcasts, joining masterminds, taking action. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
important step, right? It's one thing to hear about this or to know about it. And if you're listening to the show, you know about the power of real estate investing, right? But what else are you doing to move that forward? And you talked about investing your time, investing your money to educate yourself
Yes.
further and further so that you could grow more and more comfortable getting proof of concept and eventually turning this into a business. And not just to make money, but to
Yeah.
allow you to do the thing that you enjoy doing, which is practicing medicine and helping other people while
Yes.
you're kind of taking part on your own journey. You're helping other people with theirs. I want to go back though, because you said something that was really interesting. You said that you know, you were practicing medicine, COVID hit, and COVID obviously impacted all of us in a little bit of
Yeah.
different ways. But you talked about lifestyle creep. And I'm curious to hear like what that was like for you, because I imagine that, as a physician, you've done everything that, you're taught to do, going to college, getting a great education, highly educated doctor, and lifestyle creep is kicking in, and you're looking at your finances and it must have been somewhat of a challenge. So just talk to us a little bit more about that.
So so I'll tell you. So I started when I was done with college, med school residency, I came out with a ton of student debt. And that's just it just happens. Like it's med school is expensive. And I know that I knew that, and I knew that going in. And so in the beginning, I was living below my means. And I thought because I do things differently now because that 2% interest rate is way better than, at that time, I wanted to pay it down. And so I was doing everything that I could to pay that down. But when you are done with residency, when you're a physician, there's a lot of good that comes out of it. But there's also that idea that like I have to live up to the standard and I have to live up to this name. And sometimes we fall into that trap, and that is the bigger house, the bigger car, the change in location and where we live, like our expenses, for some reason, it just quadrupled. And I don't buy that. And I think that that goes into a little bit of like delayed gratification. So it's like, what's my end goal? And if my end goal is something bigger than like a flashy car, and there's nothing wrong with it, because like to some extent you've worked so hard that like you deserve something, and so there's nothing wrong with that. But like it really does go back to like, what do I want out of life? What do I see really? How do I want to impact? That's the biggest thing for me. And so for me, I knew that, right? I knew that. So COVID was hard from a mental standpoint, and like just being in the hospital, seeing death, seeing the fear, the chaos, like it was hard. But for me, I'm so grateful that like I did not suffer financially, because I worked hard up until that point, and I knew that like, so what one day give you a quick story. A close colleague of mine was at work, and she got a letter saying, you have a meeting tomorrow morning. And tomorrow morning came and she was let go. And that was a huge slap in our faces, because at that point you realize that like even us as physicians, like our jobs were not guaranteed. And so it's like, how do you set yourself up for whatever it is that comes your way? And that was the big thing for me. And that's really when it hit me. And I said, in Chem, what are you doing to secure your tomorrow? What are you doing that's gonna set you up for like the next 10, the next 15 years? Something that, like I said in the beginning, and I meant it, they did not teach us how to prepare for that. We know medicine. Like if someone were to drop down right now, I would know what to do with my eyes closed. But do I know like where to invest? Do I know how to diversify? Do I know all these other things? Do I know all these other asset classes, all these alternative asset classes that could truly help me build wealth, so that when I go to the hospital, I'm not worried about what my finances are doing. I'm not worried about my family's doing. I'm there because I want to be there. And that was a rude awakening for me and for a lot of my colleagues, to be like, hey, what are we doing? How are we doing? And if it wasn't as important to them, I felt like it was my job. At that point, I felt like it was my job to bring it to the forefront, to like teach them, to be like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Come to this webinar. I'm interviewing these people, on these physicians who are doing really well in real estate. See, we can do this too. And you don't have to be an active investor. You can be a passive investor. You can just let your money work for you, so that you can go to work and be present in that moment. That's how it evolved for me.
I think what resonates to me as I listen to you share your story, completely different industry, right? I was in
Yeah.
advertising and marketing, but a very similar kind of origin story as far as like what made me realize that I had to, diversify from my W-2 job where, I was at General Motors and we went through a similar bankruptcy and we had a round of layoffs and, there's a guy who was, kitty corner to me and he got let go. And I remember this was pretty early in my career, but I remember thinking that one, I felt really bad for that guy that, he really didn't have a plan B and was left scrambling. But I also realized that I didn't want to be in that position as well.
Yep.
At some point, no matter what career you're in, no matter what company you work for, you can be let go. I mean, it's a numbers game. It's about profitability. It's about seniority. It's about all politics. There are a lot of reasons, right, that this can happen. So you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to secure your future? And it
Yep.
can't be, I'm just going to work harder, right? Certainly that's an option, but I think what you found and what I found is the power of real estate to
Yep.
create options and flexibility. And it's not to say leave your job and quit your job. Actually, I think it's the complete opposite.
Yep.
It gives you more flexibility so you can focus on your job and
Yes.
not necessarily focus on how much money you have at this very moment. So that's the reason we love real estate investing. I know that's the reason that you love real estate investing is sharing that opportunity with so many other people in your network. Let's talk about that. So you mentioned that you did your first investment, you did a couple more investments, I think 300 or so units total, before starting to look at, how do I take this and move to the general partnership side? Talk to us about what you were going through as that LP investor, especially the first deal you were looking at.
Okay. So For a lot of for a lot of us, the first deal was 50,000. And initially, I was very risk averse. And so 50,000 is a lot of money. It's not a lot of money, but it was like, well, where is that going? What is that going? And so in the beginning, there was a lot of fear, fear of the unknown, because I knew at that point, money in the bank was better than money elsewhere. That is not true anymore. I have learned better. I have
Well,
absolutely
after these
learned better.
banks have just closed, I don't know if everybody agrees, right?
So I have learned absolutely that that's not true. But in my mind, and that was a mindset shift that
Yep.
I had to switch. I will talk about that a little later. But
But but
so
but but Dr. Kim, I think that's an important point, right? Like the perception most people have is that money in the bank is quote unquote safe. It's secure. It's FDIC backed, right? So if you have money outside of putting it under your mattress, putting it in a bank is the most secure way of people thinking. And I think that for them to really step back and recognize and quite frankly just challenge that notion. Don't just accept it as fact, challenge it. You
I
know,
agree.
find places to invest where you have more either control or at least more knowledge of what's happening, or at least you can understand what that growth pattern is. But I think it's really important for people to, like you said, have a mindset shift. And you don't just magically have it. You have
No.
to actually challenge the information that's put in front of you and ask why. And I know that you've had to go through that. So
Yes.
50,000 is a lot of money, is not really that much money. It kind of just
Yes.
depends, right? But it's a
On
big
Yes.
investment. It's a big
Yes.
investment. So go back to where you
And
were, right?
so
So
and that's and
50,000, you're
so
weighing that.
And so I started off with really vetting the sponsors. I learned about, even before I jumped in, I learned about what multifamily was. But that's because that's who I am. There's some people who just jumped in, but I needed to know, I knew I was going to do it, but I needed to know with certainty. If I lost the money, I would have been okay. But I wanted to know that this was the right thing to do with the money. And I wanted to know because I felt like this was probably, I knew that this was the route that I would go. And so it was on me to do the research before. I vetted the sponsors, I vetted the location, I learned everything that I could as a passive investor. I asked questions, I interviewed all the team members. I went above and beyond for just that my first 50,000 because I thought it was important to me. But at some point I had to take a risk. And at that point for me, it was a calculated risk. I knew that I knew not everything was certain, but I felt like I had known enough to jump in. And that's where sometimes we struggle with like analysis paralysis and we just keep looking, keep looking. But I knew at some point that I had to jump in. And I'm so grateful that I did because at that point I saw returns. I started seeing returns. I started seeing the money grow. And I was like, wow, this makes sense. It was at that point that I realized that money in the bank was not it. It was not serving me any purpose. And my 0.05% interest rate was nothing when I knew that I could make 7, 8, and I was actually seeing it. And so for me, that was a big deal. But like, I really mean it when I said like there had to be a big mindset shift. The things that I knew, the limiting beliefs that I knew that were holding me down, I had to let go of them. I had to be like, in Cam, this isn't serving you well. And in education and in taking action, those were the two big things for me that were able to help me leap. Like I said, I'm a lot less cautious, but I was very cautious before and I didn't think it served me well. And so now that as long as I started letting go of some of those beliefs that were not serving me well, it was helping me make better decisions. And so when I decided, hey, I'm going to jump in, it was with certainty. Even though nothing is 100% certain, I still felt a little bit better about it. And that's how I was able to make the leap. And as soon as I made the first leap, it all made sense. That the second one was an easier decision. The third one was an easier decision. And I'm not saying that, like you're not going to fail or things are not going to, not going to go in your favor. But I am saying that like I have learned, and one of those mindset shifts is that like failure is okay. And there's nothing wrong with that. If as long as, and it's really not failure, it's just one tiny setback in the future of all the possibilities that you can have. So I didn't see it really. It was such a cool like light bulb moment switch for me where I was like, it's okay to fail. Like I learned so much from it and I'll use that next time. And so I wasn't worried anymore about failing. I wasn't worried anymore about losing because I saw the upside. I saw the potential. I saw where it was going. And for me, it was a no-brainer. And so that was the biggest thing that I would say was that jump, was that taking action, was the education, was the mindset shift. And then that at that point where I was like, okay, you have to do it. Like you just have to take action. And that's what I'm trying to teach. That's what I'm trying to educate the healthcare professionals that are, my investors. It really is it. I want you to vet me. I want you to see who I'm investing. I want you to see who the partners I'm partnering with. I want you to learn, and then I want you to take action. And even if it's not with me, if someone else aligns with your goals and your vision, go with them. But at this point, I'm like, do something, and that's the biggest thing for me. And that's how I went from, to my first deal as a limited partner.
What were some of the limiting beliefs that were holding you back?
Oh, I can tell you that. So like stuff like, will I be successful? I'm not good enough. This isn't for me. Um, we're not supposed to do this. Stay in your lane. Those were the things that truly were holding me back. Like, can I do this? I know medicine so well. Can I switch? The identity is such a big deal, and it's such a big thing. And I learned that like my identity was rooted in medicine because that's all I've done my whole life. But I realized that like it's not who I am, it's what I do. And so now I know that like I'm a physician, I'm a real estate investor, I'm all these other things. And I can be that. And but that had to take some work. It wasn't a one day thing because like I had to show up in my full self for me, for my investors, for my partners, for my patients, for my family. I had to be the truest version of myself. And that was what my identity was. It was no longer in like Dr. and Chem or in an active investor. It wasn't one thing. It was the culmination of everything that made me who I am. And truly, John, those were the things that um, I had to, like I had to let go of. Those are things I had to learn. Those are things I had to endure. And those are things that I had to break through that like I can sit here today and tell you, these are the things I've done. This is who I am. This is where I'm going. This is who I'm growing into. And I can say with confidence, not, and it's not from a place of like pride, but it's more from a place of humility that like I knew the work that went into it. And I feel confident that like I know where I'm going now.
I think there are a couple of takeaways for everyone, right? So for, the one is recognizing we all have limiting beliefs, right?
Yes.
And there's an image of who we are based on previous information. And
Yeah.
whenever you're looking to do something different professionally, you got to question it because it's a new endeavor, right? And especially if
Yes.
you're going to continue doing what you're doing. You're a doctor. That's what you study. You have 6, 7, 8, how many ever years of formal training as a physician before you formally kind of went to that space. So you have a lot of time invested as a
Yeah.
doctor, so it's easy for us to understand why your mind is going to question you as a real estate investor. It's like, well, do you understand anything about real estate? Do you know how to invest? Do you know? And all these questions pop up, and it's easy for you to doubt yourself. And I
Yeah.
think that's important for all of us to understand is that it's okay to have some of these questions. What's not okay is to just listen to that and say, no, I can't do it and cower away. What I would implore you to do is exactly what Dr. Income did, which is educate yourself, surround
Yes.
yourself with people in this space, learn as much as you can, read books, listen to podcasts, attend events, join masterminds. That's going to help you get more and more comfortable. And eventually you're going to be able to build the information and the
Yeah.
resources to overcome some of those doubts. But
Yeah.
it's completely natural to have some of those doubts on
Yeah.
anything that is new. And I coach my kids like football team and some other sports. And one of the things I always try to, encourage them is like, hey, this is new for a lot of you kids. Don't expect to be great out of the gate. Expect to have some success, expect to have some failure. That's a part of learning. That's a part of growth. And I really appreciate you sharing that you've come to grips with that because I think so many new investors are so concerned with losing their money. What
Yeah.
happens if the deal doesn't pan out? If I lose my money? Like, it takes some time to process that even if you lose money, you would still want to move forward and do a deal. And that may seem crazy, but you're moving forward in the direction you want to be. The best
Yes.
example I could give is a mentor of mine told me that, you know, his goal was to condition his mind to think like the kind of person he wanted to be. So if you want to
Oh, I
be a
love that.
billionaire real estate investor, a billionaire real estate investor is going to go hunt for the next deal, no matter what happened with the last deal. right? It's just like in
Yes.
sports, if you're a hitter, you could strike out. If you think you're a home run hitter, you're gonna go right back to the plate the next time and expect to hit a home run,
Yes.
right? And it's a mentality where you have to move on to the next player. And I'm assuming in medicine is similar, right? If you have a bad day, a patient, you can't help as much as you would have liked. You can't let that ruin the
No.
experience for the next one. You've got to be able to, compartmentalize and move on. And I think that's a really important aspect is, so many people get burned off of one investment or one experience, and then they decide, well, this isn't for me, or real estate's not for me. And it always makes me, disappointed that someone could say, hey, this strategy that has helped 90% of, the millionaires in this country isn't for me. It's like, I think it is. I think maybe your strategy was off, or maybe you didn't do enough things with the right partnerships or whatever it
Yes.
is. But it's really important to recognize that, hey, this is still a great strategy, even if
Yes.
that particular execution didn't go as according to plan. When you're talking to these, physicians, other potential investors, I assume some of their concerns are similar to what you experienced, but I also would imagine that there are other questions or things that come up that maybe you weren't anticipating. What are some of those common things that you see?
So there are two people are still people, even if they're physicians. So there are two schools kind of thoughts. The first one is some of the investors, some of the physician investors I've met are just completely opposed to this because they work hard and they're like, you know what? I trust the stock market. Look at what it's done. But, I know my 401k and they're okay with that. And no matter I can teach and I can educate and I can empower, but some of them are just like, this is what I know. This is probably what I'm going to keep doing. And so some of those questions are more like, can you guarantee me? Well, nothing in life is guaranteed. So, like, except breath, like, even that, that's finite. But, like, so nothing truly is guaranteed. So, when you ask me, can I guarantee you? I can tell you, I can show you the numbers and I can tell you, this is why I'm doing it. These are the risks. There are risks in everything, but this is how we mitigate some of these risks. And this is why I'm doing it. So I can't guarantee 100%, but I can tell you this is a lot safer because we're thinking about it long term. So we're not here to make a quick, this is not a get rich quick scheme. This is, and we're looking at this in the future. This is like one investment after the other. This is building on something big so that, like, eventually passive income is generating more money than your active income. And that's when truly you're financially free. And so those kind of questions are questions that, like, I will just tell you what I know, but I can't guarantee you. And so, in essence, those people probably won't invest. And then there are other people, other physicians who get this, who completely get this. And I'll give you an example. One of my colleagues, with that first deal that I just did, he invested. And I remember sending him the PPM and I said, hey, you have to read this. And he's like, listen, I know you, I like you, and I trust you. And he's like, if you're behind this, then I'm behind you. And he goes, I understand the risk. He says, nothing is, nothing is 100%. And so and I said, I still want you to read it. But he was just like, listen, I get it. He goes, I've seen the work that you've put into it. And so some people see that and they get it, so in that school of thought, in that group, that sect of people, they get it. They get proof of concept even before they get proof of concept. And so those are kind of the two schools of people that I've been dealing with. But, a lot of the questions are, a lot of questions are more like simple questions that really, truly most investors would ask, which is, why are you picking where you're picking? Where are you guys looking? How are you vetting these deals? Who are you working with? Like, what happens? A lot of them. And then there's fear. A lot of questions I get is like, well, what if I want my money tomorrow? And I'm like, well, this is not as liquid. So before you do it, you have to know that we're in this for 3 to 5 years, and so there's no out, and a lot of these people, a lot of our healthcare professionals have disposable income. They've grown a nest egg. So 50,000 is not like, it's not a blow in the stomach for them. And so when they ask that question of, what if I need it tomorrow? I don't really think it's what if I need it tomorrow. It's really fear of, like, I'm not sure what's going to happen. So I want to make sure that if something were to happen, I can pull it out. And so that comes with education. And a lot of these questions and a lot of these fears can be truly mitigated with education. And I've learned that the more you know, the more resources you provide, the more you're available to have these conversations and to teach them these questions, just like they dissipate, they disappear, and they feel more confident. And that's where the work has been for me. Before, in that, just go back to a little bit of that mindset shift where I didn't understand the power of investing in yourself. I understood paying $100,000 for an education, and I understood, like, I saw that, but I didn't understand what it meant to really truly, like, invest in myself, invest in my future, pay for coaching, pay for a business mentor, things that would enrich me as a person so that I would be better equipped to serve you. And so the more, like, going back to the questions now, like, the more I've done that, the more I can show up and be like, I understand where you're coming from. I understand your fears. This is how we're going to mitigate it. So a lot of the questions that I've gotten are truly based on lack of education and fear of just doing something new. And the more they see me, the more they talk about it, and that's why, I'm like, that's why I've committed to, like, doing webinars, really to putting myself out there and to also bring other real estate professionals to let them see, hey, this is working. This is how people are doing this. Let's jump in. Like, it's high time that we don't have a seat at the table.
I absolutely love everything you just said because it's so important to understand the questions, the concerns, the fears that so many people
Yeah.
have. And the reality is it's just not going to be for some people, right?
Yes.
And you've got to come to grips with that. Like you're not going to get everybody to see things the way you see things. They have a different, financial background, financial experiences, the different relationship with money, and
Yes.
you can't make everybody see it the way you do. With that said, you mentioned that one investor who didn't even read the PPM because he's like, hey, I know you, like you, trust you. I know how much work you've put into this.
Yeah.
So if you're behind this, I'm behind you. And I think that's a testament to building a brand.
Yeah.
And I think some people
Mm.
get confused when we talk about a brand and they think about having a pretty website and nice logos and graphics. A brand is who you are when
Oh,
people
that's
aren't
good.
in the room, right? A brand is what people say about you when you're not there.
I
I
like
can
that.
try to craft that with messaging and advertising and stuff like that, but a brand is what people think about Dr. and Kim when she's not there to talk about herself. And doing the things that you've done, the webinars, going to the events, the podcast, all those things, well, people see you. They see you doing that. So they know that you're investing the time and energy. You've invested yourself, right? You've invested in these deals as an LP investor before moving to the GP side. So that credibility is there because they're watching you. And if you're looking to raise money for deals, one thing we tell all of our clients, and I think is really important, is how we kind of started building and getting that traction in our business. You've got to build in public, right? You've got to find a
Yeah.
way to create a thought
Mm.
leadership platform or to have some way to share what it is you're doing, why you're doing it, and bring on other people, other experts who can share why this is a great tool or why this is a great vehicle to create wealth. Don't expect just to call five guys you went to school with and say, hey, I'm doing this real estate deal. Do you want to put up 100K? If you got it like that, great. But for most people, they're going to need to see that you're committed to this, that you're dedicated, that you're educated, that you're willing to invest your money, that you've got skin in the game. They want to
Yes.
see that level of commitment and they want to know, like, and trust you and your knowledge base before they make that commitment for themselves. So if you can do that, you're going to see way more success than if you simply try to call some old college friends and hope that it works out from that standpoint. So really great information. I love the way you kind of broke down your steps as far as the way you educated yourself, the way you shared what you were doing through these different webinars, reaching out to people in your network, and then something that's kind of subtle, but you kind of allow people to kind of go at their own pace, right? So you were doing these webinars. It wasn't like you said, here's a deal, check out
No.
this webinar. It was more about, let me help you with some of the concepts or why we're doing this and bringing these people on. And that
Yes.
allows people to kind of educate themselves a little bit and maybe ask better questions. And then I think you can probably identify, well, who's really serious about these
Yeah.
opportunities?
Oh, yeah.
Who needs way more time to process this and to get comfortable with it? And then who are people who are flat, flat out just not going to move forward with this? And that's fine no matter what. We're not salesmen trying to pitch
No.
people this.
No.
The goal and the opportunity is simply to let people know that, hey, there's an opportunity out here to
Yes.
grow your financial future. If you're interested, there's a lot of information that we're willing to share to help you learn more. What do you think was I think the the biggest help for you to get comfortable working with other investors as opposed to simply just being an LP yourself?
So the biggest thing for me that like helped me is that I'm gonna be honest, when I show up, as someone, as a physician, that builds credibility alone. So that helps me kind of already have a foundation and someone who is somewhat trustworthy. I don't take that for granted. And so I use that to my advantage in that, like, now I can show up as that and still say, hey, I've put in the work. This is all the things that I've done. I've enjoyed it every step of the way, but I want you to see. You said something really profound, is that like I have I have learned publicly. I jumped on LinkedIn. I didn't have any social media in January. And I just said, I'm going to show up and I'm going to walk people through what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, the struggles, the mental struggles, the mindset shifts. I talked about it every day. I said, these are the things I'm doing. This is how I'm investing. If an investor asked me a question, I put it on LinkedIn and I said, hey, this is what they said. This is how I answered it. Now, my questions weren't always right. My answers weren't always right, but I was just like, so the biggest thing for me that has helped me is authenticity. I have learned that, like, I can only be in chem, and this is who you can see. Yes, I'm a work in progress, and there are things I need to fix, but for the most part, like, I can't be anyone else. And that the facade of who I try to be, it will only last a day or two or three. But like, who you see here is who I am. And then people resonate with that. People resonate with, okay, this is her, this is who she is. She's a physician. Now she's trying to do this. We see you, we see the work that you're putting. And that's how I present myself. So I shared with you earlier, but like, I did something big and I sponsored a physician conference, and they had seen me as a physician for so long. And this time I said, hey, this is in chem, the physician that the ER physician that and now the real estate investor. These are all the things that I've done. This is where I am today. This is where I'm going. Come alongside this journey with me. And that's literally the story I shared. I stood and I just said, this is who Phoenix Capital is. This is what we're building. This is where we started. We're new, but we have potential to grow. So I showed up as my authentic self. I didn't lie. I didn't build this big thing that I'm not. I just said, this is the foundation. You know me. Let's work together. And I have learned through, like, just surrounding myself with people who are like-minded. Like you said, I'm not selling this. I've already gotten proof of concept for myself, and I want you to do it too. And that's the angle that I'm coming from. So you're not, some people will not come with me on my first deal. The first deal, it was truly like friends, colleagues who just were like, I saw you day one. I saw you. I'm in it. I didn't have to sell it at all. I literally had conversations and the answers were yes. And so I think that, the more that I put myself out there, the more I let people see who I am, what InChem is about, what Phoenix is about. And I think that natural progression is how we're going to get investors. So I'm not worried about you today. I just want you to sit like I did. I sat on the sidelines and I learned, because not everyone's like you, John. Like, you're like, the first time I got it, I'm jumping in. Some people just want to see you lurk in the background, and see what you're doing, and then be like, okay, I get it. She gets it. Let me try. And that's my approach. Truly, that's my approach to investors, is that, like, I am who I am. The things I can't change. But I am learning, I'm growing. I've seen this, I get this. And now I want to teach you. I want to educate, I want to empower you. Come alongside with me. I don't know if that's an approach or that's a strategy, but that's what I'm doing.
Well, I love it all. And I will say for our listeners, if you're asking yourself, well, you know, great, Dr. Inkim has, medical degree and she's a doctor. Of course, people are going to respect her and listen to her. Maybe you don't have that. What I would say is there is always going to be an audience of people that you
Yes.
are uniquely positioned to connect with.
Yes.
So
Yes.
figure out who that is for you. Figure out, how do you let them know what you're doing, build those connections. If you need to, again, join masterminds, get a coach, get
Yes.
a mentor, build your credibility and show these individuals what you're doing in this space and why they should be investing. And I think the biggest thing is do it out of service. Don't do it just because you can make money in it, but you did it to help these physicians understand, hey, you don't want to get let go and called into the office one day and be left scratching your head. So starting to invest passively, starting to create that passive income, that gives you more power and control of your life.
Yeah.
Again, if you want to connect with Dr. Income, she's got a great information. She's on LinkedIn. We'll put her LinkedIn link in the show notes. You can also check out her website. So go to PHE Invest. That's PHE Invest.
It's
C.
PhD.
PHC, man, I can't even read my own handwriting today. PHC Invest, which makes way more sense. I don't know what the E is. PHCinvest.com. And you can connect and get more information there. Right now, we're going to go to our round of insights. Are you ready?
Ooh, yes, I'm ready.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
So I was kind of really thinking about this, and this answer might be a little vague, but it's the truth. The lack of taking action, it truly just, I can't look back. You can only learn looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking forward. But like, I just think if I had taken action sooner, I would be leaps and bounds where I am today. This is for someone who is maybe 5 years behind me. Just do it. Just jump in, take action. Like, you will see fruit. Don't be afraid. That fear of failure literally is like a magnet to the ground that's holding you down. You have to like pull against it, because you will go far. And so I'm glad that I realized that today, because I know that will take me leaps and bounds forward. I wish I realized it 5 years ago, but that's okay. And that truly is, it's not one thing, but it's that concept of like not taking action and being terribly afraid of whatever.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
ChatGPT. I really think that like where technology is going, I think that we need to learn how to use it. I don't think ChatGPT is going to take your job. I think it's a person who knows how to use it really, really well, who knows how to prompt, who knows what it's all about. So I think that like where we are today, I think that we just need to leverage AI in general to kind of help us move our business forward.
Give me a book that's, let me say it again. Give me a book that you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
I have enjoyed reading The Alchemist, and I like stories. And so it's a story about like following your personal legend. Like, what is your story? What is your purpose? And go after it with everything that you've got. I think that it's a small read, it's a quick read, and it's a good story, but the concept and the principles in it are so profound, which is go after what you know is yours, figure out your purpose, figure out your why, and chase it relentlessly.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
I picked up gratitude journaling last year, and January 1, I sat down and I reread everything, and I was blown away. And so I try to, every day, I just try to write what I'm thankful for, who I forgive, my big ideas for the day. And so like when you go back and you read those, it's just amazing to see how you've grown, like at the end of the day, you're right, like what was successful, what were some woes, and just to go back and look at it, I think it has helped me. It's just helped me realize that life is short and the important things need to be important.
Give me your number one insight for multifamily investing.
I talked about it earlier. I think diversification is key. Whether it's different location, different type of asset class. I think that it builds creativity. I think that it mitigates risk. And I think that you can be creative in what you do if you just spread out.
All right. And you're in Nashville. So give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
I just went to a really, really nice sushi restaurant, Virago. It was like a really cool, neat area, and it was fun. And they had this wasabi martini that was like weirdly really good, but the sushi is good too.
Oh man, sounds interesting. I'll say that. It sounds interesting. Spicy.
It's very spicy.
Well, Dr. Income, I really appreciate our conversation today. You talked about kind of your journey, being in the medical field as an ER, And then really recognizing that, hey, between lifestyle creep and having more flexibility, you really need to find a way to create more passive income. You turn to real estate, multifamily investments, did about 300 units as an LP investor before transitioning more to the GP side and helping other physicians and other professionals invest in real estate. And, talked about the limiting beliefs that you had to overcome. You talked about, just, investor feedback and questions and recognizing that, hey, for some people, it just wasn't going to be a fit. And for other people, they watched what you were doing in that commitment and that made them comfortable. I just think it's really valuable for us to learn from someone like you, learning from your story, your journey, and hearing more about what we can do to help grow our own portfolio and our own financials. Again, if anybody wants to learn more, they can connect with you on LinkedIn. Also, go to your website, phcinvest.com, phcinvest.com. Dr. Income, I want to thank you again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you and hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, John. Really, I meant it when I said in the beginning. I've been watching, following you, and it's been an honor to just like have this conversation with you. And thank you for making it easy and seamless. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Okay.
You too. Bye.